can I put my position to you and see what you think about this? Now, there are definitely some lunatic conspiracy theories out there that are definitely not true. Not even the people who love conspiracies will put their names to it. Now, what I worry about as a writer, I wouldn't call myself a journalist, I was a writer first, is that when you've got this weaponization of conspiracy happening and you tell people that nothing is real and trust no one, and people start to drift towards the genuinely absurd, not just what could be true, but what is definitely not true. And then I've been finding that this is actually damaging centralist politics or libertarian politics. So, for example, when you've got a very serious issue like what happened with the COVID vaccines, where you've had people who've been coerced into taking things that have killed them or injured them, and you're trying to get some kind of legal recourse for this, and you've got one of the main people who's involved in leading the charge against the vaccine, we'll call it corporation, for instance, and then they go and post something on their Twitter that basically says they subscribe to flat earth theory, that invalidates the rest of the work that they do. And so my problem is, from now on, when you try and say, well, look at this work that someone's done and look how dangerous COVID vaccines are, you're then burdened with isn't that just the flat earth guy, for instance? And it makes it very difficult to get real mainstream movement against people who have committed genuine crimes against humanity. It seems to make it more difficult rather than easier with this sub-narrative going on all the time.
I get this, I hear this an awful lot from people who are sort of, as it were, halfway down the rabbit hole, and it's kind of a cope. You don't want to accept that the conspiracy can be as broad reaching as it actually is. I'm agnostic about flat Earth, so I mean, people often bring up flat Earth as kind of the killer example. All I know is that 5 years ago, I thought that all conspiracy theories were untrue. And what I find is that it's a mistake to rule out anything. I think our duty is to the truth, nothing else. I don't buy this idea that because somebody thinks one thing, therefore it invalidates another. And I think this is particularly germane, actually, to the subject you mentioned, which is the pandemic and the vaccine rollout. I see lots of people in the mainstream trying to make out that this was just an accident, that it was just like incompetent ministers, cock-up theory, basically, that there was nothing malign about it. It was just idiots who overreacted to what potentially could have been a real problem, and just got a bit authoritarian and fascistic, you know, like Dan Andrews did in Victoria, for example, and that awful man in Northern Territory, and you know, a few others, but it was just kind of a few bad eggs overreacting, you know, waggling their testicles and getting overexcited, but that actually it was all a mistake and lessons learned, and it's just not true. It's a cop out. It's actually worse. It's almost worse than it's almost worse than denying there was any kind of problem, because what you're doing is you're making excuses for what was actually planned and deliberate. There was copious evidence to show that it is planned and deliberate. And whether the person who says it's planned and deliberate believes in flat Earth or not, the fact remains that it was planned and deliberate. They road tested, they war gamed the pandemic, and it was planned in 2019 at something called Event 201, which was coordinated by John Hopkins. John Hopkins has been funded to the tune of millions by Bill Gates. Bill Gates's Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is in it up to the neck in this scandal. The World Health Organization is corrupt. Big Pharma is corrupt. This was not some kind of cock-up. This was deliberate. That there is stuff in those vaccines which is making women sterile, which is causing people to have blood clots, which is I spoke to a guy who had to have his leg chopped off, his leg amputated as a result of the AstraZeneca vaccine. This is not accidental. This is not cock-up. This is real. And people need to stop engaging with these copes whereby they say, well, I'm not going to engage with that theory because somebody has said something funny about something else. It's not an argument. It's a cheat. It's a cop-out. We've got to look at the truth in the face, however unpalatable it might be.